Kilmar is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump. No! Kilmar is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump.
The Department of Homeland Security is trying to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Liberia after 3 other African nations rejected the idea. DHS tried to deport Abrego Garcia to Ghana, Eswatini, and Uganda. All 3 said no. The agency now says Liberia has agreed to accept him.
Well, update, it looks like Trump can indeed have him. Because Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the quote-unquote wrongfully deported Maryland father, is now apparently facing deportation, and it's looking to come here very soon to Africa. This comes after he has repeatedly lost every single court battle that he's been facing. Of course, Democrats have been standing here saying he was wrongfully deported. He needs to have his due process. He's our hero. He's completely innocent. He's our neighbor. And yet every time he gets in front of an immigration judge, it turns out that he cannot win on the merits because the guy already had a deportation order set for him years ago. And I have to say this. I'm not saying that I feel bad for him because I think this guy, it's pretty clear, was not exactly the most upstanding member of society. But I will say that all of the liberal activists and immigration lawyers who convinced him, hey, stay and fight, you know, the Trump administration is in the wrong, you're going to win this, basically to use him as a political pawn, really in the process screwed him over. The best thing for him would have been, okay, you know, just go stay in El Salvador. Don't try to fight this. But now that he came back under the human trafficking charges, by the way, and he keeps trying to fight it, and he refused to take the plea deal that would have just sent him to Costa Rica, like apparently he was saying he preferred. Now look at what happens when you F around and find out, right? Look what happens when you actually face the real consequences of the due process because you are, guess what? Guilty. So with that said, guys, in today's video, we'll give you this vital update on the legal battle over Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who, let's not forget, Kilmar is our neighbor. Kilmar is our neighbor. Just utterly insane. All right, we'll tell you about it though. First though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It's not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And here is the news from just this morning. The Trump administration said it could deport soon Salvadoran illegal migrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the African nation of Liberia, after reaching an agreement with that country, according to a Department of Homeland Security filing on Friday. The court filing said that Abrego Garcia could be sent to the West African nation as soon as October 31st to fulfill a standing deportation order against him. Now, it's worth noting again why this is happening, why he's being sent to a third country in Africa. And it's because, again, he decided he wanted to not he, really, it's the immigration lawyers and the activists decided they wanted to grandstand, they wanted to fight. And then guess what? Again, now you're reaping the consequences of those decisions. We'll show you in a second what the immigration lawyers are saying because it's actually pretty hilarious how, again, they put him in this situation and then they're crying about the situation. So Abrego, he should, by the way, try to sue the immigration lawyers, frankly, but they're terrible. They screwed him over so badly, but it's kind of funny. Abrego Garcia was mistakenly deported, quote unquote, to El Salvador despite a 2019 protection order and a court order barring removal to his home country. But here's the thing that Democrats didn't understand. He did already have a final order of deportation. All the court order said was because they think he might face danger in El Salvador, he shouldn't be returned to El Salvador. Well, 2 things about that. First of all, the gangs of El Salvador have been utterly decimated, as many of you probably know, by the new right-wing president, Nayib Bukele. So honestly, I would argue the safety concern has since expired. But even if you want to still use that, it didn't bar removal from the country. It just said don't send him to El Salvador. It did say to send him to a third-party nation. So now guess what they're trying to do? They're sending him to a third-party nation. And now they're mad. Oh, no, you can't do. That's what the court order says, right? Doesn't say you can't send him to Liberia. So here's where the details get very funny. As you know, the case has become a focal point, right? Democrats have made this guy their martyr, right? Chris Van Hollen going to El Salvador, having margaritas and all this stuff. But here's what's really comical. Okay. So the filing noted that Abrego Garcia's attorneys cited more than 20 countries he allegedly fears would prosecute or torture him if he were removed there. And Liberia is not on that list. Because, you know, before the talk was about countries like Uganda, I think Eswatini, Rwanda, and the lawyers were saying, no, you can't go there because he doesn't even speak the language. Which we first of all said, for example, Uganda literally speaks English. Anyone remember this?
Preposterous that they would send him to Africa, to a country where he doesn't even speak the language, a country with documented human rights violations, when there are so many other options. This family suffered enough. They need to stop trying to separate them. Everything that they've done to Mr. Abrego Garcia, they've done it for one reason, which is that he had the temerity to exercise his constitutional rights. So the government's decided to use the immigration system to punish him by sending him to Uganda. We're going to fight tooth and nail against any form of deportation to Uganda, South Sudan, Libya, any other, completely ridiculous country that they...
Again, what an argument. He can't go to Uganda because he doesn't speak the language. Oh, you mean the language of English? So then in that case, right, why is he even in the United States? What is the language of the United States? It's cruel to make someone go to a place where they don't speak the native language. Oh, really? So it's cruel to be keeping him in the United States then, clearly. So stupid. By the way, I'm pretty sure, right, Spain has former colonies in Africa. Someone can correct me. I think, like, what is it, Burkina Faso or Guinea, Equatorial Guinea, some of those countries. I don't know the exact ones, but fine. Send him to those African countries then. He speaks Spanish, right? You just want him to speak the language, okay. But, clearly, as you can see, the court order does indeed read, federal defendants hereby provide notice they identified a new country for removal that has agreed to accept the partitioner, the Republic of Liberia, which, by the way, is basically like a former American colony, sort of. It's actually a country set up by our former slaves who wanted to go over there and make their own society. So, look, that's amazing, right? He should be free from oppression. He should be free from the white man and their evil ways, and they can go live in, like a pan-racial, amazing harmony. There you go. Okay, so Liberia is going to welcome him with open arms. They're so much more tolerant. They don't have any white privilege or xenophobia or racism there. So there you go. Right? Enjoy Liberia. I hear it's a wonderful place. Although the petition, and by the way, I mean that sincerely, right? People, oh no, you're making jokes about Africa. No, it's a great place. By all leftist standards, it should be a paradise. It is not really a former colony again. It's set up by the former slaves, the very slaves who built America, the real ones who built America, right? And then they don't have the white man breathing down their necks. Okay, so everyone, go run in the fields with the flowers, Mr. Abrego Garcia. There you go. Although the petitioner has identified more than 20 countries that he purports to fear would persecute or torture him if he were removed there, guess what? Liberia is not on that list. So the Trump administration basically just said, well, you named a lot of countries you don't want to go to. Liberia is not one of them. They speak English. Oh, wait, that's a problem. But anyways, they speak English. Okay, go over there then, right? Now, the filing said, and I quote... Liberia is a thriving democracy and one of the United States' closest partners on the African continent. I'm not laughing. I just had a cold. I was sneezing. Okay. No, it is a thriving democracy. Again, it's built by, like I said, the real people who built America. So there you go. Right. The filing said the country's national language is English. Well, Kilmar doesn't speak English, but its constitution provides robust protections for human rights. True, by the way. Okay, there you go. And Liberia is committed to the humane treatment of refugees. Well, there you go. DHS said in its filing that it has received diplomatic assurances from Liberia about the humane treatment of people removed there. Well, there you go, right? What's the problem? What's the complaint going to be? Well, the attorneys for Abrego Garcia blasted the administration's latest move as political retribution. Really? arguing the latest deportation plan is part of punitive deportation tactics, saying, quote, after failed attempts with Uganda, Eswatini, and Ghana, ICE now seeks to deport our client Kilmar Garcia to Liberia, a country to which he has no connection, thousands of miles from his family and home in Maryland, said the attorney, according to the Associated Press. Okay, let's break that down again. First of all, the initial country that was agreed upon was Costa Rica. The DOJ basically said, if you accept the plea deal and plead guilty and just agree to stand down in this case, we'll just send you to Costa Rica and this can be over. Of course, what did his brilliant immigration attorneys, and by the way, they said, if not, though, you might be deported to somewhere else and we can't do that. So, basically, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. What did his immigration lawyers do in their brilliant wisdom and need to pursue left-wing activism? They didn't take the plea deal, which would have been the best thing for him. And now they're quite literally whining and complaining that he's not going to be sent to Costa Rica. It's like, you have that offer on the table. You rejected it. So now look what's happening, Again, and then they say a country he has no connection, thousands of miles from his family. Since when does he have a connection to Costa Rica? Isn't he from El Salvador? Isn't that his home country? Isn't that the very place, by the way, that you don't want him to go back to? So if you want him to go back to a country with a connection, then send him to El Salvador. Oh, but you don't want to do that. And then you're like, well, why Liberia? Hey, what's wrong with the Africans? They're just as human as you or I, okay? They love the flowers just as much as us. I think it's frankly racist, okay? It is so racist for his immigration attorneys to sit here and pretend like he would face barbaric or inhumane treatment on the African continent. Are you saying all those societies are violent or something? What a colonizer, imperialistic way to look at it. No, those societies are beautiful. Okay, and I think Kilmar is going to have a wonderful time having his culture and his mind enriched. Okay, he's going to bring diversity and they're going to bring diversity in. So he should be living a fantastic life. What's the problem? What's the problem, guys? But anyways, so as I pointed out, right? The lawyer added, saying, quote, Costa Rica stands ready to accept him as a refugee, a viable and lawful option. Yet the government has chosen a course calculated to inflict maximum hardship. These actions are punitive, cruel, and unconstitutional. Well, guess what? That's what happens when, number one, you didn't take the plea deal to go to Costa Rica, and also B, okay, it's worth noting, despite all of the Democrats who seem to think this guy has a winning legal case, this is all happening because just last month, a judge once again denied to renew Kilmar's immigration case and asylum case because guess why? It was always improperly filed. He way past the statute of limitations to apply for asylum, considering, again, this guy was an illegal alien. There's a reason why he already had a final deportation order years ago. And basically, because of these activists, he continues to lose time and time again in federal immigration court because of that.
Breaking news here into the live desk. A judge has now ruled that Kilmar Abrego Garcia will be removed from the U.S. This is a man who came here illegally from El Salvador, got deported by the Trump administration, then got brought back to face charges here in Tennessee. He's currently being held in ICE custody, and the Department of Homeland Security shared this message on Twitter saying, in part, quote, his lawyers tried to fight his removal from the U.S., but one thing is certain. This Salvadoran man is not going to be able to remain in our country. He will never be allowed to prey on innocent Americans again. That's the end of the quote. Abrego Garcia, as I mentioned, deported earlier this year before being brought back to the U.S. to face federal human smuggling charges here in Tennessee. His lawyers filed an emergency motion in August to keep Abrego Garcia in the U.S. A judge has denied that ruling and did that just yesterday. Abrego Garcia just got moved last week from a Virginia detention center to a facility in Pennsylvania. The U.S. government says this was so his lawyers had better access to him. Any more developments that come in, we'll bring them to you right here at the live desk.
Yeah, well, again, guys, there was only one way that this was ever going to end for Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Maybe two, because he could end up in federal prison. But the premise that he was ever going to walk and remain free on U.S. soil as a legal immigrant was just never going to happen. Because he already lost this. He lost this case 6 years ago, right? Already has the final deportation order. Now the judge is once again saying, yeah, we're not going to overrule that because you are an illegal alien. You basically came to America in 2011. You're supposed to apply for asylum within 6 months. You didn't apply for like 8 years. That's not a valid asylum case. And by the way, even today, asylum from what? As I said, you're scared of the MS-13 that you are allegedly a part of. Well, first of all, that makes a lot of sense. But then secondly, MS-13 is not even there. It's not even in El Salvador anymore. It's just in the United States because a very good president and world leader basically just wiped them out and rounded up all the members, right? So there you go. Anyways, Senator Chris Van Hollen, you remember the margarita guy? I'll read you his statement. Condemned the latest filing on Friday. Here's what he had to say. Is he going to go to Liberia to visit him? Hey, Chris Van Hollen, I hear it's nice this time of year. Maybe you should take a trip. Go check it out. Today, U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen released the following statement on reports that the Trump administration intends to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Liberia, saying, quote, "The Trump administration has desperately been shopping for faraway countries they can ship Abrego Garcia to in order to deny his constitutional due process rights to defend him against the charges that they have brought." Well, we literally told you what was going to happen. So we'll bring him back for these charges, but we're going to try to deport him. And then if he stands trial, because you guys succeed some temporary motions, whatever, okay, then they can deport him after the trial. Even if he were found not guilty, he could still be deported because of the final deportation order. But, apparently, again, he says, oh, please send us to Costa Rica. But then at the same time is saying, please stop sending us to faraway countries, right? We've been over it already in the video. Clearly, Trump's cronies want to avoid for answering the claim they are engaged in a vindictive prosecution against Abrego Garcia, after a federal judge concluded earlier this month that the prosecution may stem from retaliation by the DOJ and DHS due to Abrego Garcia's successful challenge of his unlawful deportation in Maryland. But again, federal judges also concluded that his deportation order is still valid and they're not going to reopen his asylum case. So you really want to go down this route? Anyways, Kilmar must be allowed his day in court to fight for his rights. Well, he's had plenty of days in court now. He's had more days in court than most illegals who are deported, but apparently, it's still not enough. And as we point out, Abrego Garcia, just to repeat, entered the U.S. illegally in 2011. He is an illegal alien, okay? All the attempts to frame him as a legal U.S. citizen that got deported, no, he's always been. He never stopped being an illegal alien and was issued a deportation order in 2019. By the way, 2 previous judges, total conspiracy, that was just Trump, right? Trump is just saying that. No, 2 previous judges concluded that he was likely affiliated with MS-13. Oh, so it's almost like the allegations weren't just made up from nowhere. I know, right, guys? One immigration judge in 2019 found that Garcia had not sufficiently refuted evidence of the MS-13 affiliation and was thus removable to anywhere other than El Salvador because of a threat from a rival gang. Well, that's what we tried to tell you. MS-13, I'm told, is not operating in Liberia. Last I checked. So there you go. Enjoy Liberia, Mr. Garcia. But yeah, so we'll see what the end outcome of this ends up being, because I wouldn't be surprised if they just keep using these temporary injunctions from random district courts from liberal judges to try to keep him in the United States. But no, the situation, as the more news you get, it just sounds like it gets worse, frankly, for Mr. Abrego Garcia. So we'll see.
Let's bring in former federal prosecutor Katie Cherkasky. Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
So what's your assessment of this plan to send Abrego Garcia to this small African country?
Well, Abrego Garcia turned out to be a very bad poster child for this immigration crisis. And in fact, now the administration is showing exactly the position he's put himself in. So he was given an opportunity to take a plea deal based upon the criminal allegations that came about. But barring that, he's still deportable. So in order to accommodate what the administration says are some issues with other countries that he couldn't go to for fear of persecution, they have chosen another small African country, which they can, in fact, deport him to. He is deportable. He has been deemed deportable for quite some time. So that is the authority that the executive has at this point.
Yeah, and of course, I will never stop finding it comical that, liberals were trying to pick their martyr. They're trying to cherry pick, what's the one immigration case we can find? where maybe the Trump administration screwed up a little bit, so we can overgeneralize and say of thousands, hundreds of thousands of deportations, they're all happening like this. That's why we must stop all the deportations. You know, they couldn't even find a good example. Like, this is the best person they could come up with. Kill the MS-13 member is our neighbor. You cannot support him. Okay. Yeah. By the way, I wonder if those protesters in the beginning, like, what would they do if Kilmar Abrego Garcia was actually their neighbor? Okay. They'd probably be calling the HOA immediately, but, you know, he is our neighbor, but please don't come into our neighborhood. Like typical Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts style New England liberal, you know. They live in the least diverse places of America, but they virtue signal about diversity. Anyways, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.